Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks for coming along to discuss reskilling and upskilling with myself and Gori. I suppose first let's pass over to Gori to give an introduction to himself and Upskill Digital.
Thanks so much. Hello, everybody. Hope we're having a great afternoon. And just to introduce myself, so my name's Gori. I'm the founder and CEO of Upskill Digital. Very excited to be here today and to work with you on running through a topic which is very close to our hearts and what we do, which is about reskilling your workforce, and especially during this period of change we're going through, how COVID and lockdown has really disrupted a lot of businesses. We've seen a rapid kind of upskilling and reskilling need for workforces, and I'm quite excited to be able to be here today to talk you through that. Bit of background on Upskill Digital. We are a learning and transformation agency. I've been around for a few years now, training hundreds of thousands of people face-to-face. We're very fortunate to work with large clients to be able to deliver scalable training programs. But for us, it's all about how do we empower employees to adopt technology and really help them navigate this new digital age, or this digital age that we find ourselves in at the moment. And we're people-centric, so we believe in the power of people, and we try to help these individuals have the skills that they need to be able to thrive in the current workplace. And we're very fortunate as well to be doing this in collaboration with Assess First. So, Rebecca, we've been in conversation for a number of weeks now, and really fortunate that we've had the chance to discuss, how we could approach giving the audience here a bit of an insight into how to reskill and upskill their workforce. But of course, you yourself have a tool that you use, and you do a lot with your clients around sort of finding the right solutions and assessing people's capabilities as well. So I'll let you talk a bit about what you do, and then I'll jump into my bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Gori, for that introduction. So I'm Becky. I work for Assess First as an international business developer. I can see a few new faces in the chat and attendee list today. So for those who aren't aware of exactly what we do at Assess First, we were founded in 2002, and we now work in over 40 countries with businesses, ranging from small startups all the way up to global companies, global businesses, for talent acquisition, talent development, and or mobility. And specifically how we help our clients is by identifying, out of those either candidates or employees that apply for a position with the company, those that are the most likely, who have the greatest potential to succeed long-term in that role based on their natural talents, so their personality, motivations, and aptitude. And, like Gori said, I'm so happy to be able to speak on this topic today in terms of reskilling. I think it's very necessary, very important. It's a very pertinent topic to discuss, so it should be very interesting. And thanks again, everyone, for taking the time to join in. What I'll do now is I'll pass back to Gori to dive a bit deeper into the topic itself and explain really why it is such an important discussion to have today.
Awesome, thank you so much, Rebecca. And I think just to give you a bit of a context of how we're going to approach this, I'm going to give you a few a few slides around the landscape to tell you a bit about what it means to upskill your workforce, the mentality and mindset that you should be trying to embody when you're going ahead and doing this, the approach that you might look to take, and why a people-centric approach is so important. And then following that, Rebecca and I have a bit of a conversation about it and talk a bit about why this is so important in the current climate. So firstly, a few key stats, and it's really interesting because trying to find stats on how COVID has affected the workforce is tough enough because we're going through it right now. But it's pretty clear that COVID has forced us to change the way we work. Many people are working remotely. They're homeschooling, they're using digital technology to be able to engage with their friends and their family. And the need for some even essential digital skills is more apparent than ever. So your employees or you as an individual will find yourself having to have upskilled pretty aggressively over the last few months or so. And, a few interesting stats that I like to see here are that a lot of people that work in L&D have seen a dramatic change to their strategy based on COVID, unforeseen, completely unforeseen. And many of them believe it'll never go back to where it was. But what is exciting is that the culture of learning across organizations, albeit the roller coaster we're going through, has actually increased, has improved. It's allowed people to really understand the value of learning. Those that have at a rapid pace found themselves needing to learn how to do Zoom, learn how to use Microsoft Teams, learn how to engage and connect with their friends, their families, their colleagues, recreate the office environment remotely. It's that level of upskilling that is absolutely necessary. But from businesses, from the starting point, once COVID really hit, it was really into survival mode, right? It was trying to make sure you keep your head above water, making sure that we are, treading sort of fast enough so that we can navigate our way through this real crisis that we find ourselves in. But what is really important, what I've seen a lot from a lot of businesses that we work with, is really seeing further forward and looking out of the survive mode into what thriving would hopefully look like. And where upskilling, reskilling really come into that is visualizing the need for your employees to have the skills that are necessary to take you out, to bring you out of this current crisis, and really tying reskilling into your business priorities, right? It's really, really important because when you are trying to bounce back or bounce forward, as some people have said in this sort of resilience land, you need to ensure the people have the right capabilities to be able to get you there. And employees do have an opportunity right now to really ensure that they're assessing the skills that are out there and making sure that they can invest in the right areas to be able to grow their workforce in a way that allows them to fulfill the needs of bouncing out of this current crisis, and looking ahead, looking post COVID, which is really important. We don't know kind of exactly where we're going to be in 3 or 4 months' time, but as many people are looking at their back to office strategy, they're thinking about what does thriving look like? Do people have the skills they need to be able to thrive in this current climate? And looking at implementing workforce learning, there are many different stages of doing this, but you've got to ensure that whichever way you approach it, that you are really kind of tapping to the rhythm of business and integrating learning in a way that becomes much more accessible for individuals. So whether it's tapping into your Microsoft Teams or your Slack, or making sure you're integrating it so that people can connect, is really, really important. And there is process that people might take, from identifying the skills that are needed, the competencies that are needed. Don't always mistake confidence with competence. Making sure people have the skills they need to be able to do the work that you need to is incredibly important. Make sure you know who is key to train, who is key to upskill, who now needs more reskilling based on what you've learned over the last 3 months or so. Different target groups will actually face different barriers to reskilling. So it's important that you reconfigure how you approach the target groups based on what you know about them. Think about that rollout plan, the learning paths, and pilot and scale. Pilot and iterate. Think about how you can change that model as you progress. It's really important that we can create a path to do that. I talked about barriers because we do find that people seem to have a barrier towards learning. Fortunately, COVID has allowed us to I guess, reignite that curiosity, that growth mindset that we have to be able to learn through a current crisis. But at the same time, when it gets to workplace learning, I think there's a stat that says only 23% of businesses across the UK actually deliver any sort of workplace training to their employees, or employees have said the same the other way around. So employees have said only 23% of them have actually received any, which means that there's a huge gap to go, and employees need to do more. Even as employees are furloughing individuals and trying to look at their recruitment plans, they need to make sure that they're investing in the right way, but being aware of the barriers that might exist to learning. So from an employee's perspective, things like motivation, are you helping to spark that curiosity? So, does your learning content show a value add to them? Is it relevant to them? Do they see the relevance? Do they feel like they've been consulted in the creation of this content? Access. Do they have the devices to do what it is that you'd like them to do? Are they still being onboarded? Do you find like half your organization can do the skills, can implement the skills that you've just given to them, and the other half can't because they don't have the devices and the tech? And does it fit into the flow of work? right? So am I doing this purely online? Are there great virtual instructor-led training courses? Do I have the time? Typically we'll all be saying, is time an issue? And with COVID, you would have imagined we'd had more time than ever to learn. And some people have said they're actually busier than ever, which means it might be less time, but have found ways to learn at pace. And that's really important for us to know. I mean, many of us will be sitting here thinking when COVID first hit, we thought, right, what am I going to try and do with the time that I hopefully would have? So am I learning a new language or a new instrument or whatever it might be? But there are frustrations that come with having the desire but not having the motivation to actually do it. So motivation still, I always come back to as being a bit of a key to sparking that curiosity and make sure employees get that extra push of inner strength that they might need to go out and seek that information and seek that learning as well. So helping them see the value add is incredibly important. And I want to make sure that everybody is clear on what that means from an approach perspective. And I just wanted to sort of finalize on the power of people, because when people start to consider digital transformation or transforming their organization to be more either digital first or be more ready for the digital age, you've got to think about the people, right? Transformation starts with people. It's people first approach. It should always be the case. The technology is important and it's key. But if you can't onboard people well enough on it, then it may fail. And 90%, as they say, of transformation programs fail. Many of those reasons are because they don't invest in the people properly. So, we are a people-first company. We deliver large-scale training programs to organizations to help their people onboard onto new technologies. We build out programs that are fairly creative. We help perform skills gaps, and obviously, says first, know the importance of trying to identify exactly what it is and the capabilities they need to be able to help grow the company. But when you're building a program, consider the delivery formats. So is it all e-learning? Is it all virtual learning? Who is delivering the virtual? Who are your facilitators that are doing that? And make sure that you're using an adaptable and scalable approach. So pilot, measure, and scale. Pilot's a super important way to approach it. And hopefully if you can scale, you're considering different countries you're delivering this in those. So you're thinking globally, am I localizing well enough the market, localizing well enough for those challenges? It's really key that you're taking into account some of those factors or those levers of localization when you're looking at scaling as well. So, from my perspective, I think we're now in a really interesting period as people are getting back into the office, as we've been over that initial sort of hump of going remote, and now we are getting more comfortable with it, and now we need to realize what skills that we need to have to be able to drive our companies forward in this current climate. It's important to take the right strategic steps to do that and make sure that you rely on partners that can hopefully help you through that too. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a roundup of how we as an organization like to help our clients do that. And it's really important that you can sort of look out there for support and consider what skills that you need in the organization to help. Apologies for the background noise. This is the nature of doing this remotely, of course. So that kind of gives a bit of a wrap up there. Look, it is an absolute pleasure to be able to be in the room with Rebecca, the virtual room with Rebecca, and talk through some of our thoughts, our insights that we've gathered over the last few months to help us prepare for, the future of reskilling the workforce moving forward. So I'm actually going to hand back to Rebecca and invite her back into the conversation. Oh, Rebecca, you're on mute. It's classic.
There you go. I did that on purpose just to see if you'd notice.
Of course.
Yeah, perfect. So I think the best place to kick off this kind of conversation Q&A session would be the beginning. So it would be great to get some insight from you, Gori, just in terms of, where do we even start in terms of reskilling our current workforces? Where do we begin, and what kind of fundamentals do we need in place for that to happen in practice?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think one of the first things you should be considering doing is running a skills gap analysis. I think it's incredibly powerful to have that data to know where the capability gaps lie. Some people choose to do that by leveraging a competency framework. that might be out there. There are a few that are out there for the UK. A lot of them are, relate to kind of early stage digital skills. So the Essential Digital Skills Framework exists. There's also the Skills Builder Partnership have a universal framework. DigComp, which is the EU framework, have one they just launched for work, literally only a few weeks ago. And what that does is help you understand the skills that are needed in the current workplace as a base level. I think it was either Lloyd's did a study not long ago, and they said 17.3 million people across the UK don't have all 5 essential digital skills that are needed for the current workforce. So that could be everything from being able to transact comfortably online, to being able to understand a company's policy around social media, for example, or even cybersecurity wise, protecting themselves from threats that come our way. So understanding that framework and then being able to build a skills gap analysis off the back of that is a good starting point. If you've been familiar with doing training already in your organization and actually find yourself transitioning to virtual training, making sure that your facilitators, your trainers are equipped to be able to do it well. A lot of the work we've done quite recently is helping organizations rethink how they've been delivering training and making sure that their facilitators, by doing a lot of trainer sessions, are equipped to be able to deliver this effectively through whatever platform they use, so be it Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or whatever it might be. But if you start with that analysis, you gather that data and insight, and then you start to map out which departments, which business units, which individuals need the right level of training. You might start with leadership and say, actually, leadership, can you be the sponsors that we need to have to be able to drive our digital strategy forward? That might typically be a good approach for you as well. But it depends on the kind of the approach you've taken before. And in this current climate, you would have seen a lot of your employees really engage on their own self-learning, right? So how do you leverage that want and add that into your sort of mix from a learning perspective? I think another thing that I was going to mention was about motivation, and actually to pick up on that motivation piece, because I keep saying it, because as much as we love to learn, I know actually, Rebecca, you have some interesting software that you use to be able to understand people's motivations and their wants, with Assess First. But from your perspective, and how you've worked with your clients and understood where your clients are finding barriers or challenges, how do you ensure that your workforce would have the right motivation to learn and actually perform the new skills that essentially you'd be ironing out or identifying for them? Be good to hear from you as well on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question, and especially kind of picking up on that point that you just mentioned there about entrepreneurial style, learning from your workforce, really encouraging that is key. This question of motivations when talking about reskilling and upskilling and redeployment is very essential. And I think, even just to answer this question, initially, I just kind of need to, force the actual need to ask it. Because, when we're talking about reskilling, upskilling, especially when it comes to digital skills, there is, a very obvious hard skill technical element to that. But unfortunately, if you are reskilling and implementing any kind of program revolving this based on hard skills alone, it's not going to be a success, or at the very least, it's not going to be as successful as it could be. Like, for example, I technically could learn a language. I technically could, I don't know, climb Kilimanjaro. Maybe that's a bad example. Maybe I couldn't do that. But, even if I technically can do something, doesn't mean, in practice, I'm actually, going to do that, and I'm going to do it to an acceptable level of quality in practice. So we also need to consider motivations and soft skills. So, don't just ask, can my employee do this? You need to consider, is it really what they want to do? And is it how they want to do it? Ask yourself and be really aware of the fact and the question, are my workforce, are they motivated to learn skills and reskill? But most importantly, are they actually motivated to perform that skill, perform that new task, potentially perform that new position in a new team, etc. Because, now more than ever, I think business continuity is at the forefront of everything. And I don't think anyone right now can, afford to either lose an A player from the business or have them, moved into a new role or, into a new task where they're not going to perform as well as they normally would. And so it's very, very key to consider, not just if you're reskilling, but if you're reskilling the right people into the right skills, etc.
I think I can agree with that as well. I think it's really interesting when you talk about the difference between hard skills and soft skills, and the motivation there when people are also being redeployed across the organization. We'll see that a lot of organizations have had to get a lot of their teams to be doing different tools, different roles, and the motivation needs to be there from a soft skills perspective to want to learn that problem solving, adaptability, agility. Those are really, really key. Do you see that, how soft skills kind of play a role in that? Do you see that being a really important sort of area for people to want to invest in for their employees?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a necessary area, but sometimes, unfortunately, I think it's slightly overlooked. And as you mentioned, there's new roles, and with that comes, new positions, new work, but also potentially more work as well if we're talking about redeployment. So motivation and performance and soft skills is key. There's several studies that show if someone's passionate and motivated about their job, they're going to be up to 6 times more performing in that role than if they weren't. So it's definitely essential and definitely necessary to discuss, especially now. I think people are more and more considering this, because I think we've all kind of taken this time to, step back and reevaluate a lot of things in life, reprioritize and prioritize definitely, happiness. And this is especially the case for workplace happiness. So I think it's definitely the case that it's a conversation to be had. And I think it's definitely a conversation that is going to start to be had when it comes to reskilling and redeploying. I suppose, okay, so it's established that it's very essential, but, actually identifying motivations in practice, with that, I would say start with data. So I'm sure you're all aware, the first step to reskilling, upskilling is kind of taking, identifying your skills gap and identifying the skills that you currently have in your workforce. And again, when you're doing this with your technical skills and digital skills, do not omit the soft skills. And by that I mean both, the individual skills of your employees, so that their natural talents, but also consider and do not forget the wider context. So, identify and take into consideration that can be, team dynamics, managerial styles, affinity between employees, and, even the wider company culture. Because, with reskilling and redeployment, like you just mentioned, Gori, it's going to come with, new tasks for sure, but potentially new roles, new teams. You might be working, you might be going to an office with a new manager, a different working environment. So it's very, very key to consider all of these soft skill elements, all of these elements when identifying, how successful and actually implementing a successful reskilling program.
Yeah, I can agree as well, actually, just to say, like, we've got clients that are looking to do a re-onboarding program for people that have been furloughed and getting them back into the workforce. And one of the biggest challenges that they have is they're thinking, okay, these individuals, the workforce will look the workplace might even look a little bit different to what they had before. And they have been on a roller coaster of emotions, like we all have, for the last 4 months. So that those external or sort of outside factors that we need to be considerate of when we're trying to get employees to come into the workplace and now have their work hat on, focus back into what they were doing before, which might have changed ever so slightly, and reskilling that, especially when it feels like it's new for everybody. There are a lot of extra factors that are being added into it. But I think you've got to get to the core of the structure, of really building that skills gap and analyzing what capabilities are now needed for the future. Not throwing away the old map because you invest a lot of time on there, but you might have found that you've accelerated the need for digital upskilling over the last 3 or 4 months. And now it's like, okay, can I reassess those capabilities or the capability framework I was looking at and make sure it's still fit for purpose moving forward?
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen, you know, it's kind of always been an underlying current, this need for, you know, development in talent acquisition, talent development, and it's definitely, you know, identifying skills gap, and it's been kind of shoved to the forefront right now. So it's always been there, but it's definitely, you know, the height of everything right now that we need to discuss. I suppose picking up on that is the question, okay, so we identify the essential, you know, fundamentals, but in practice, you know, and Gori, this would be a great question for you and Upskill Digital, you know, when you're building that learning culture, how do you do that effectively at the right scale and ready for post-COVID?
Yeah, well, you know, I mentioned before about many sort of learning development managers sort of seeing their learning culture improve, or they've seen a bit of a change within that since COVID came about. And that's because you're finding a lot of individuals are doing a lot of self-learning, right? So they're going away and realizing they have to learn quickly to be able to deliver Zooms and Teams and all these other tools that they didn't perhaps use anywhere near as much, but now it's at the forefront of how we're trying to communicate. So there are a couple of things that we do with our clients on helping them establish that learning culture. And it takes into account more than just the learning content that you create. It also looks at the internal communication that you put out there. So we part of our needs analysis is that we assess what channels you use to communicate with your staff, your employees, to help them know about the learning that they might need to take if it's mandatory, or might be interesting to them if it's just sort of optional, but helps kind of, you know, kind of build that curiosity with them. So there are many different methods. So from an internal comms perspective, you know, getting out those regular emails about, you know, what have you learned? What can you share that you've learned amongst your own team? You know, keeping that conversation going around the importance of learning, you know, not shying away from the fact that we've all had to learn something new working from home, all of us, right, for the most part. So, you know, it's leveraging that and making sure that we're all actually sort of in this together, and that relatable approach really helps people engage much more easily across each other as well. Leveraging your platforms. So if you're using the likes of Slack or Microsoft Teams, creating channels that allow people to share their learning across each other is really, really important. You know, if they are really keen on if you have a competitive workforce, to say you're in sales, for example, you know, they may want to talk about what they've learned and actually sharing their successes on what they've learned. So we do a lot with a few clients around digital badging. So that means once you've completed a particular course, you've got a badge to show for it. We encourage individuals to share those badges on their social networks, part of their personal brand, get people to really shout about you know, how much learning they've done. And that starts to really build that culture. When one person does it, they realize maybe I'm missing out on not doing that as well. So you start to feel at scale, it starts to grow, which is really, really important. So the terminology is also really important when you're talking about building a learning culture at scale. Make sure everybody's talking around the same approach to learning. So, you know, we're talking about if it's virtual instructor-led training, your facilitators using the same terminology that aligns with the digital strategy, so people can feel there's a relatable, you know, approach to how the company is moving forward from a digital strategy perspective, and that hopefully starts to build the culture in the right way. When we do our scalable sessions or scalable programs, country by country, we have to localize the right path to scale, right? So we have to see where the barriers lie, identify them, and make sure that we can overcome them, because certain cultures are going to be slightly different in their approach to engagement, you know, in the organization. Certain cultures are different in terms of how people speak up in conversations or in meetings or in stand-ups, for example. So, you know, there's a few factors we take into account. But I think it's really, really important that you are embedding learning into the flow of work as best as possible, right? So making sure that when people are speaking with their managers about it, managers are asking the questions about how your learning is coming along. You know, when you're thinking about the content you're delivering, you know, ensuring that it is scalable. So do you have very regular virtual instructor-led sessions? Do you have lots of bite-sized learning that people can take away, that people can engage with? You know, are you leveraging your platforms to be able to get this out there? And do your individuals, your employees actually, do they go through an experience when it comes to learning? And that's really key, because just, you know, getting all of your facilitators to go out there and jump on Zoom and deliver the same training probably won't have the same effect that you want it to. So you've got to really reconsider, you know, how do they deliver that in a way that that kind of replicates what used to be done. And we, for example, we have a huge network, about 200, 250 or so coaches across the globe, and we equipped pretty much all of them with the microphone, the lighting, the setup, sometimes for the most part, a second screen to make sure they can really have the setup that's right. Because our network are full of some of the most charismatic digital experts I've ever come across. And we don't want to lose that when we deliver this virtually. So we have to try to find a way to make sure we can, keep that going as well. So yeah, I think when it comes to scale, when it comes to kind of building that learning culture, leverage the fact that people over COVID have been doing a lot of self-learning. Even those that have said they wanted to, but didn't actually get around to doing it, they wanted to, which is a good starting point. A lot of people have been going out there teaching their next door neighbors or their sort of elders, how to, use technology. So there's that kind of real kind of, vibe for learning that's out there as well. And I think that's really important from a scalable perspective. So hopefully that is a good way to do it. But I'm interested to see some of the questions that are coming in. So I've seen a few that have been popped up. So maybe there's a few questions we can answer.
Yeah, perfect. So we have one here. It says, how do you identify soft skills gap, or just a skills gap in general? I think might be a good question.
Should I take that? Do you want to take that, or shall I? I can take that.
I'll let you go ahead, and then I'll add.
Sure, great. Well, look, I think understanding people's level of soft skills is much harder than understanding technical skills. I think we can all agree that. And I think when it comes to soft skills, there has been a lot of research that's been put out there to better identify where people have the ability to problem solve, the ability to be more agile. The results for those can be quite complicated and don't always yield the simplest training plan off the back of that. But I do think from a soft skills perspective, defining which of the soft skills that you believe the individuals should have. So from a leadership perspective, do you have the skills necessary to lead a team through change? Do you have the kind of agile approach, test and learn, that kind of approach from a digital mindset perspective? There would be some important things that you'd be looking to measure. So, identifying in the same way, you would ask the questions in the same format, but the questions will be very, very different, right? So there are many different soft skills that are out there, or transferable skills, I prefer to call them, that you would need to try to break down. And that would just be level of confidence as well. So, how confident are you in problem solving in X scenario? Actually create a problem for them to solve, to work out if they're able to approach it in the way that you would expect them to from the position that they're in. Critical thinking, good example where people often don't critically think about some of the content that's put their way. So you would, again, just assign the questions that allow for you to assess if they do think critically enough for the sake of the issue they might have, especially when you're talking about cybersecurity. So we have those skills and critical thinking when it comes to people trying to attack the company, right? Do your employees have what it takes to check whether or to be critical of the emails that they get in to make sure that they're able to protect the company. So that's typically how you do it from an assessment perspective.
Yeah, especially perfect. And I think I would just add there that, identifying soft skills, it's a lot harder than, with technical skills. I think soft skills, you have to be very self-aware to identify them yourself, and then obviously very honest actually to admit that in practice, whether, like you said, Gori, if you have strong leadership and, change management and whatnot. I think the foundation of this is, really work in partner with the technical aspect and hard skill aspect of everything, have that really strong, business strategy in place. And then from that, identify, where you need to go, and, not just today. So what kind of skills gap do you have today, and what skills do you need today? But try as best as you can to predict as much as you can, where we're going to be next week, next month, and so forth, which, it's difficult, especially now. We're changing more than ever in terms of a priority last week, a priority next week, and especially in terms of emerging skills, we're seeing now more than ever, these skills are new and, potentially they're being replaced by even more, even newer skills before those skills could even be taught, or, you know, and actually be applied in practice. I think the best thing for this, because things are, you know, changing so quickly, is, you know, finding that sweet spot between human element and technology. So, you know, identifying your skill set, you know, and identifying it accurately, especially soft skills, identifying it accurately with technology and or AI, and then, you know, using that technology to keep on the ball, you know, to see into the future of where, you know, we're going to need to go with these skills, and getting that real-time data in terms of, you know, updating those skills as well, and where your team are and where they need to be.
Yeah, I can agree. I think that continuous assessment is very important, right? To ensure that you are continually ensuring that they have the capabilities that are needed as the world is changing, and soft skills are very kind of core to that, or transferable skills are very core to that as well.
Absolutely. We have another great question from Karen. Thank you for your question. So how can we encourage employees to take ownership for their own department? It's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I mean, we have worked with a few organizations around creating personal development plans, or professional development plans, which are basically, you know, set around their own passions, their own wants, perhaps even their own career aspirations that they want, you know, they're looking to aspire to get to. You know, we all know that the career ladder isn't quite what it used to be. It's definitely more of a lattice or a jungle or a web of some sorts, right? So often people find that they're not quite sure where they should be heading. And I'm sure kind of your experience working in recruitment, it's really key to have people kind of have visualize that North Star, and then understand that there are steps, there are skills, there are capabilities that they need to be able to have to take them there. Even if it's more lateral movements, you know, they need to be able to visualize what is needed in that particular role. So for me, from a skills perspective and motivation perspective, you know, getting these individuals to understand that there is a path that they can take, you know, be it it's a bit windy, there is a path that's there, and they need to be confident that progression means continuous skills development, right? Continuous learning. And rather than people just feeling stale, it's not a simple ladder. So it's not just saying, you know, do X, you'll get here. No, you have to continuously learn to make sure that actually that is the skill that you want to do, right? That's going to help you in the role that you want to take. So, you know, what we've seen work across, you know, some organizations is, you know, helping people visualize that their path by giving them examples of what skills certain people in certain roles have, right? And getting those individuals. So we do a lot of peer-to-peer learning. We have a digital champion programs where we have individuals share their learning with others, talk about what they're doing in their role, and do internal training. In our organization, as a learning organization, we do skills training every week. So somebody every week will do a session where they talk about what they do and how everybody else can learn a bit about that. And that's really useful from a visualizing how others have progressed themselves, and seeing other people actually take ownership of that is really key. So once you see other people do it, it helps kind of grow as well. And I think managers have a really important place in this, which is helping people visualize what progression would look like and where capabilities are needed for progression. And I think that's kind of really key as well. So that's it's never an easy thing, because ownership should be there, but I always say leverage. There's a couple of quotes that's all flying around, one from Winston Churchill, which is, you know, never waste a good crisis. And obviously that really revolves around leveraging what's happened the last few months, the good bits, the bits which are people are learning, self-learning a lot themselves, which means there has been development, and we want to channel that into professional growth as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think just to add on to that, I think you know, the foundation to that is just really trusting your employees. I think we can all agree that, you know, your workforce and your employees right now are more important than ever. You know, they're the people that are gonna get you, you know, to the other side of this as strong as possible. So, you know, there is a genuine, you know, from TA leaders, development, HR, any kind of leader in a business, there is a genuine, you know, want and need and, you know, passion there to invest in your workforce, invest in their skills. So I think just be honest and open with your workforce and your employees. You know, this is potentially a very scary time for them. You know, they might not know when they're coming back to the workplace, you know, or even the workplace that they're going to go back to. So, you know, communicate with them, communicate that you're genuinely there for them, and you know, this any kind of reskilling and upskilling is for their benefit. And have trust. I think once they have trust in you, then they're going to be more than open. You know, they're going to accept this with arms wide open. You know, all those examples Gori gave of, you know, people sharing their successes and their learning. They're going to be more than happy to sit down, you know, reevaluate their own skill set, and you know, learn these new skills that are going to potentially to, you know, new tasks, a new team, a new manager, a new role that's going to really let them, you know, thrive even more in the work, going to let them perform better, and you know, just be happier in general. So I think it's definitely a win-win for both the employees and the business as a whole.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Absolutely. I think it's funny you mentioned happiness being a really important you know, thing to be aware of when people are coming back into the office. I've spoken to many L&D managers whose roles feel like they've changed ever so slightly, from being more than just working at L&D, but being more well-being focused, right? So being more either well-being managers or, you know, chief happiness officers or whatever you want to call them. But that's really key. And if you want someone to really be able to take ownership, you've got to feel that they are happy about their growth and they want, and you want to tap into the passions that are there as well. So yeah, that's a great question. Try to see if we have any other questions coming in. Please, by the way, if you've sort of been silent, by all means, do ask questions. We're all for the questions in this. It's supposed to be more of a conversation, so happy to answer any that come through.
We have 2 minutes left, and I've just saw one last question come in. So if we just answer this very quickly. So how do we measure the success or impact of reskilling?
Great question. I think the first most important thing that you do is ensure that when you are doing your skills gap analysis, you're identifying the capabilities that you have. That sets the framework, the competency framework that will hopefully allow for you to measure impact against. You want to ensure that you are aligning your skills gap analysis with your business goals, right? So, you know, what does it mean for the business for an individual salesperson to have these skills so that they can better drive more sales? So data visualization, or something that really allows for them to take hold of these new capabilities and utilize them in the organization to drive forward. So, you know, measurement can happen a number of different ways. We do pre-assessment, post-assessments. We do continuous assessments all the way through to see how people are progressing, you know, integrating badging systems, see if people are engaging in the content. You also want to, you know, check uptake of training. Of course, it's really important to measure impact based on whether you think the training is actually being engaged at the level that you want it to engage. So when we do training that involves the online platform, so a lot of our training is blended learning. So we would build a customized platform that allows us to track how people are engaging, but we have to marry that with a virtual instructor-led training to make sure that it really brings it to life as well, which is important. So success for you can be based on a number of different things. It should always align with your business goals. You should be able to tie that into what your business is trying to achieve, and more importantly, what your digital strategy is for the business. There may be a really sort of big tech rollout that's coming out. It could be an employee tool that they have to use. So onboarding them to that, you know, impact will be where people are confident in using that, not just competent with it as well. And then ensure that you are doing that across different levels of the business too. Different levels will have different needs of impact, levels of impact. So just mapping against that is really key. Never a simple one, the measurement area, but I think, you know, you'll probably have a lot of experience, Rebecca, with the tools that you use, and I think it's important that you are keeping to the data. The data is really, really key.
Yeah, definitely. Technology is going to be, you know, your best friend, definitely in terms of this, and exactly like you said, Gori. So, you know, it depends on how you measure success. Success today might look different to success tomorrow, but I think the point that I'd, you know, just finish off on today, just for the time, so is really just manage your expectations. in terms of the current climate, and also just be aware that, you know, again, depends how you measure success, but it might be, you know, you might not see any kind of, or the very obvious success from reskilling, you know, down the line. So success to me, in terms of reskilling, is the actual performance of those skills in practice. So, you know, by the time they're taught and they're actually, there's valid data on how it's being performed in practice, it could take a little while. So be patient. I think I've spoke a lot about, and we've talked about motivations today, is very key. So, you know, the motivations of your workforce, but what's essential is the motivations of the leaders, of you here today. So keep that motivation going, and really the rest will follow.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll just say, you know, thank you very much from my side for the time and the chance to be able to run you through our thoughts and our approach to reskilling your workforce post-COVID. Say post-COVID, you know, hopefully things die down pretty soon, and we can get back to the workplace and start to implement and integrate those skills the way we know we can.
Absolutely. And we just, you know, we wish everyone here obviously the best with everything that's going on at the moment. And if you have any more questions that we didn't cover or pick up on today, feel free to get in touch, and we will be here to chat with you personally as well. Thank you all so much for coming.
Great. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. Yes, completely. Please reach out. Great. Okay. Thank you.